Isn't it funny how easily we miss the point of simple stories? Something about the parable of the talents seems to prevent us from understanding it. I remember when I was quite young hearing this parable. Somebody pointed out that the word translated as talent in our Bible meant a sum of money. I was therefore left trying to work out the religious meaning of this parable, which seemed to me to be little more than a primer in the workings of the stock exchange. I was a simple child. Just as well you're on mute. I had another problem too. My sympathies were with the chap who buried the money rather than with the other two who went and doubled their money. The two who invested their money did in the event double it, but, and it is a big but, they could have lost it all. He entrusted his money to them. That is, he asked them to keep it safe, and they risked it on uncertain investments. Surely the chap who buried it was the one who most carefully obeyed his master's instructions when he entrusted the money to them. Now, the first thing to realize is that in the parable of the talents, the word talents has two meanings at the same time. On the literal level, it does indeed mean a sum of money, but in the metaphorical sense, it means, well, talents. The second point worth knowing is that in monetary terms, a talent was a huge sum. I've seen it written that a talent was the equivalent of a labourer's daily wages for 20 years. 20 years' salary, that's a lot of money. So this means that the master in the parable entrusted a huge amount to even the servant to whom he gave only one talent. So what is this parable about? And more to the point, what's it got to do with us? Well, look again at the opening of the parable. It's one of those occasions when our Lord is trying to explain to his disciples the nature of the kingdom of heaven. Remember that a better way of translating the phrase kingdom of heaven might be the rule of God, the way that God rules, the sort of king that God is. So our Lord is trying to explain to the disciples what it means to be ruled by God. Then notice that significantly, our Lord talks about the master giving talents to the three servants, each according to his ability. Each according to his ability. Now, if we remember, as we always must, that a parable has at least two levels of meaning, let's consider what is being said at the metaphorical or allegorical level. God gives to each and every one of us certain talents, and God gives us these talents to use in accordance with our ability. The big question is, what do we do with our God-given talents, however limited? Now the parable begins to make sense. It is, of course, the third servant who is at the heart of the story. The third servant is the least talented, but in order to double his talents, he would have to acquire only one more. Instead of this, he gives up. He buries it. He makes no use at all of even his limited talent. We are not all multi-talented, but God gives us all something to work with. We can use our limited talents to serve others and thereby glorify God, or we can give up. We can do small things well. We can do a few things diligently. What we cannot do with God's gift to us of our talents is simply to bury them. We have to use them to the glory of God. In the Queen's birthday honours list some years back, she granted honours to a 60-year-old postman in North Wales, a fellow with the unroyal name of Jones. Because Jones, the postman, who came from a family delivering Welsh mail for 150 years, had not missed a day's service in 43 years and got the mail through despite snow, storms and floods, the Queen bestowed the British Empire Medal upon him, expressing the gratitude of the nation. This was what Mr. Jones did. It was not spectacular in itself, but he did it scrupulously and gave services to all who depended on him. Indeed, it was because he was so scrupulous that they were able to depend on him. He did this one thing, and he did it extremely well. It doesn't seem a lot to ask, does it? God gives us all talents according to our ability. Some people will acquire new talents, others will just use that they have to the best of their ability. But it would be insulting to God, just as it was insulting to the master in the parable, simply to bury our talent and do nothing. Whatever we decide to do, God sees, God knows. God's question on the last day will not be, how much did you achieve, let alone how much were you noticed? Rather, his question will be, were you faithful in fulfilling your calling where I placed you? Did you try? Did you do your best? Or did you just bury your God-given talents? May God give us all the grace to use the talents that he's given us. Amen.